Good news.
Yes.
We both have things you can purchase now. So, Spencer, Wicked Shadow Press has finally released the Flash of the Dead Reloaded feature in your story. Hi, my name is.
Yes.
It is about a serial killer anonymous group, but not what you're thinking.
Nope.
More like an AA group.
Yeah.
Like recovering serial killers, but one of them maybe doesn't want to be recovered.
Yeah.
You got, at least on the digital copy we looked at, a 5-page spread.
Yeah, that was, I didn't think that.
I'm assuming that translates to the regular book as 5 pages.
You would think.
That would be fucking cool. So you could purchase that now. The only problem, Wicked Shadow Press only sells on Lulu. So you have to find them on Lulu, which is, if you go to their Instagram post, they have the link address. You can.
No, yeah.
When is Instagram just going to make it you could click on the fucking link?
Right, like you can only you get like one link in the bio.
Yeah,
but you can't do any links in the posts.
I think you can maybe if you get like their business one or you pay or some shit. But that's fucking annoying. What I always do now, which is handy, is my phone has like the Google Assistant or Samsung, whatever. You just hold the button, you can highlight the link and it'll just go right to it through Google. That's very handy because before you'd have to because you can't copy and paste from Instagram either. You can't highlight anything. So you'd have to literally either screen grab it and then try to do it,
write it down or
type it one. Yeah, fuck all that. So you can get that now available. I think it's $20.
Yes, I do believe $20 for the paperback, or you can do a digital through them too,
which is probably significantly cheaper. I would imagine. Also, my story, The Dreaming Dead, has been featured in I think we talked about Chill Mag. Not Chill Magazine, Chill Mag.
Ooh.
I got my contributor copy the other day, so you can go on my Instagram at Caleb James 1986. I always forget my name's different on there. At Caleb James 1986 on Instagram, I posted. You could see how good the magazine looks. They fucking, it's like a professional.
It's nice.
It's a legit art magazine.
Yeah, no shade to them, but I wasn't expecting,
Well, the thing is, the cover kind of throws you off because I saw some of their other issues. I'm in issue 4, the Dreaming issue. And I saw some of their other covers, and they're like art covers, but they don't look. I think it's the finish on the magazine. I don't know. It's like more of a matte finish, I think. So it's not shiny like a normal magazine. So it doesn't look like you think it turns out to be.
Well, and then I was thrown by the size. I wasn't expecting
it's big.
I wasn't expecting. I was thinking something like closer to like a paperback. Kind of magazine size.
Well, I saw that when they posted pictures of the proof copies they received, it looked smaller. I thought it was like a small.
Well, maybe because it's a proof copy. Maybe it was.
That's what I was thinking, but I don't know. But I saw the pictures of that, and I was like, oh, it's small, and it almost looked like not like a comic book, stapled, but it looked kind of I thought it was gonna be shitty. I was like, oh, this is
because it has an actual a little spine, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a legit full on magazine. I think the pages. I don't know if they're gloss pages, but they're very high quality pages. But yeah, it's like a full on art literary magazine, legit. I was like, oh shit. I think what throws you off is the Chill Mag title, the whatever font and this, how they have it set up. It doesn't pop out like a I don't know, like a regular magazine. You have to folks have to go to Chill Mag on Instagram to look, or like I said, look at my post. It is really nice, and you could buy that. I think they have a link in their bio. I don't know if they sell through Amazon or anything. I think because it's only print, you can't get a digital copy of the magazine. But they sell it on their website, and that is $20, I believe. But it's definitely worth it. It's like a 60+ page magazine. High end, has a lot of great art. Has a comic in it, has interviews. It's fucking, it's done. I was very surprised because I thought it was just gonna be like, oh, I've seen some of these indie kind of magazine things before, and it's just a staple paper together. And I was like, it's like a art college thing. No, it's legit. Which I should have known because they had, like I talked about last episode, a fucking launch party in Manhattan. So they rented out a shop and everything. That's cool. You can get that. And as of the dropping of this episode, you can pre-order Starlight Pulp 6 that I'm in. That's June 1st. You could do the pre-orders. I don't know when it actually drops. I'm really hoping my copy comes in next week. And I'll share pictures and read the story again and just be very happy. That's all the news. We don't have any other news, do we?
I don't believe so.
You know what? We'll talk about it in the main episode just because I want to. I'm dropping off again. Oh, yeah, we'll talk about some other things I got going on in the main episode because we are in part 2 of the narrative voice discussion.
Yep.
And I don't think this one's going to be as long because we'll be probably covering a lot of ground we covered last episode.
Right.
So we will discuss that, and you folks stick around, and I think you'll learn something. If not,
I don't know about that.
If not, maybe we'll make you laugh.
They'd probably be dumber by the end of the episode.
But maybe we'll elicit some chuckles from the audience. Oh,
chuckles.
You are listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, this is a good one. Stick with me here.
Oh, God.
Spencer, the Cambodian crack caulker church. Caulking, cracks.
Okay.
Not butt cracks. You sicko. Maybe you are. I don't know. I assumed like cracks in the ground.
Okay.
Or like the edges around your tub. You're making sure things aren't leaking through things that aren't supposed to be leaking.
I'm just feeling things.
Feeling them up. So what are we talking about, Spencer?
Narrative stuff.
Narrative voice. This article slightly more. This isn't even the one I looked up. I must have lost that one. It don't matter.
Ew.
RachelPharamond.com.
Okay.
I'm not spelling that. Figure it out. So this one actually goes more into like the tenses and stuff. Like I said, this would be the academic version. I assume. I don't know. So choosing a narrative voice for your story can be harder than you might think.
Yes.
Do you believe that?
Yes.
Okay. Sure, you may naturally gravitate towards writing in the third person. I know I do, Spencer.
Yeah.
I do quite often, and that's because I think it's a little more challenging but more rewarding than first person.
Well, you get more like kind of story opportunities.
It also, in my opinion, makes your story stand out if you're a short story writer, because almost every anthology I've been in, a good portion, like the shorter stories, not the ones with the longer stories, but like the ones that are in like the 5,000-6,000 range.
Yeah.
A lot of them are written in first person because I think it's easier to write a quicker story that way.
Yeah.
Because you just immediately, this is the perspective of the protagonist, here's his thoughts and everything. You don't have to do so much building. I like the challenge of doing that in third person, and I feel like my story usually stands out because it's different.
And that way, that also gives you opportunity where you can like you said, it's instead of one viewpoint, it's like you're telling a story with these characters, and then you can go over here with that, and it's still all the same. It's just a different group of characters. Like,
yes. So if your story gravitates toward writing in the third person, may I state this? If a story sounds better coming directly from the mouth of its main character, then that's how it needs to be written. It is a matter of what kind of story you're telling, but also what feels more natural.
Yeah.
There's stories where I started off in third person and or first person.
And it just switched, kind of.
Yeah, I guess not and or, just or. That'd be weird if it was both. And then partial way through, I was like, nah, not working. Maybe try a switch, and if a switch works, then I'll just write it that way. Sometimes the choice is obvious, but there will be times when you have to experiment. Spencer?
Ooh,
and then like experiment. No. Test the waters a little before landing on the one, blah, blah, blah. That's a very important aspect of writing that I think a lot of readers don't really acknowledge, and that is the fact that what tense and what point of view are we writing the story in? Most readers just go into it and don't really think about that, but as a writer, I am always aware. I mean, we talked about this in the past. What gets me a lot is present tense novels.
Yeah.
If they're very well done, like some Murakami novels I read, I don't you notice it first, but then it fades away. You don't think about it. But there's some where I'm just like, this is way too glaringly, obviously first person for me. I don't know why, but it throws me off. Or not first person, present tense.
Now, how do you feel about first person stories? You don't really like first person stories either, do you?
If it has to serve the purpose. If it's like, oh, this story told from the protagonist's viewpoint makes sense, then I'm fine. But sometimes I will read a story where it's in first person, but I'm thinking, this is killing a lot of the suspense and stuff. Like, this should have been third person. It would have read better. Like, I don't know why they made this choice other than it's just easier to write in first person. But if it's like, oh, here's what happened to me when I was a kid, makes complete sense that it's a first person story versus third person. All right, Spencer, there are, of course, a few things you can fall back on to help with the selection process. Do you know what those things are?
Tell me.
I'll tell you. I'll fucking tell you.
I'll tell you in your goddamn face.
All right. It said what I just said, so I'm not going to read that. Yeah, buddy. actually exactly what I'm good. I am good. I'm going to skip that because I just said it. Yeah, I'll reiterate, though. You have to choose based on who's telling the story and how you want the story told. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. If you think if the story is better told from the first person, a lot of horror stories work that way, but then also there's a lot of horror stories that are better with the suspense that comes from a third-person narrative or not knowing exactly what's going to happen third person versus first person. You could do that, but it's different. So if it's like, oh, man, I walked around the corner and there was a monster, if from first person view, you could set that up really cool because you're in the eyes of the so it's more scary than the third person. But also, and this goes with the present tense thing mainly, I've talked about I don't like present tense horror a lot because it's happening in the moment, and unless it's done well, I feel like it kind of kills the suspense a little bit.
Well, at least for the like that character that you're seeing everything through. Like you're like, well, obviously
they're telling the story. Yeah, survive.
Yeah, so like all the other characters are fair game.
Yeah,
but just for that main character,
Yeah. So I'm not I prefer third person still, and I feel like a lot of literary stuff I read is usually third person. And I just think the stories, again, unless it's like a personal story, they're just told better that way. But we'll simplify things for you, Spencer.
Ooh, I like simplify.
Yeah. So we'll focus on 3 specific things: person, tense, knowledge, character. I feel like they cheated. They put knowledge and character with a dash. It's the third bullet. Why was this just 4 bullets? You fucks. If you nail down these 3 factors, the rest should find its place in its own time. As you may imagine, there's a lot to be said about all 3 of these, so I'm not going to try and cover anything. If you want to have butt sex, use lube. Wait. That's
I'm surprised it wasn't asked for consent, but okay.
Yeah, that's usually the first thing you should probably do, but maybe it's inherent that if you're having butt sex, there's always the chance that it was an accidental slip.
An accident.
On one party's behalf, an accident.
Oopsies.
Again, consent, people. It's very important. I don't know why that's in this article. It's not. I don't want to get sued. It's not in the article. Rachel Fairmont did not say anything about sexualizing the butt. At least not yet. So let's get into specifics. Person. There are 3 types of persons you could choose from. First person, second person, third person. First person, I, me, mine. Second person, you, your, yours. I fucked around with second person stories. Never nailed it.
You don't see a lot of them, right?
Usually the choose your own adventures.
I guess that makes sense.
Because it's you that's choosing the adventure. It can be done very cool, hard to do. Yeah. I feel like it's just very limiting on the stories you can tell. Third person, him, her, he, she, them, etc. First person narrative gives you a story told. We talked about that already. I don't need to get into it, but they do give pointless examples. I don't need pointless examples. They give you some books. The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey. I'm not saying her last name.
No,
I'm not doing it. I'm going to get in trouble. Somebody's going to fucking cut and paste my vocals onto something. I'm not doing it. Niffenegger.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It's too precarious.
You guys know the movie. You can figure it out. You can find it if you want to read it.
Yeah.
Or watch it.
So Aubrey pseudo N-word and Allegiant by Veronica Roth, writing from more than one character's perspective. Yeah, blah, blah, we get it. Second person, this is the one I'm more interested in. Everybody knows what first person is. If you don't, then you probably shouldn't be writing. One of the main things to remember when it comes to any narrative voice is sustainability. If you lock yourself into a particular voice at the start of the story, make sure you are confident that you will see it through to the end. If it doesn't, blah, blah, blah. This is exactly why second person is rarely used for fiction, unless you are writing a gaming book where the readers choose their own adventure. I know things now. So. I've been doing this horse hockey enough that I know things.
You're learned.
I'm a learned man. I'm one of them academics. What is interesting about it, however, is that it puts the reader directly into the action, as the story is written as if it is happening to them. This may sound like a lot of fun to play with, and it is, but try keeping it going past the first chapter. It's a lot harder than you might think. That's why I said, I've tried writing short stories in second person. It always peters out because I'm like, damn, am I limited on how to tell this story? One thing I will say about second person narrative, Spencer.
Oh, yeah?
I will say. If I was Rachel Fairmont, because that's who's saying it, not me. is that it works quite well for stories within stories. That is actually good. Like, so if you have a character telling another character a story about, or they're telling something, the you works for that. The second person works in story, because often you will tell stories like, oh, you wouldn't believe this, or if, for example, you have a character who wakes up from a coma and can't remember how she got there, she got there, another character could quite credibly recount to them the events that led up to the comatose state using second person. You were so drunk last night, man. You were fucking running down the block and you were touching butts galore, and you were just out of your goddamn mind. So you can tell a second person story to a character. Third person, again, we know this, and they gave Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere as the example of that. This one offers the most flexibility on the story. You're less limited on how you can tell a story. You can have the unreliable narrator. You can narrate as an omnipotent god. You can do so many fun things with third person, which makes it actually makes me think easier to tell stories in third person when it's in that regard.
Yeah.
But not as easy when it comes to the character development, because like I said, first person, you're inherently, even if the first person narrator is unreliable, you don't have to do as much building on their thoughts and stuff because it's them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to do any tricks. You don't have to pull any tricks to get the story to flow naturally from first person. But third person offers more abilities and more ways to tell the story. Tense. The English language has at least a dozen different tenses. Jesus, that's too many.
That's a lot.
I didn't know there was that many. I thought it was present and past.
Yeah.
I guess there's the multiple past tenses, and let's just get into it. Let's do it. Present tense. Telling a story in the present tense offers a sense of immediacy. That's why I think a lot of horror writers and thriller writers have switched to present tense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just easier maybe for them to write that way. But like I said, I feel like it takes away some of the suspense because it's immediate. So it's like I'm walking around the corner and there's a monster.
But if you do that, like if you do like a third person present tense.
True.
You know what I mean? Because then it takes that person, like the character going around the corner. It's just somebody's telling you about somebody going around the corner.
Past tense, that's just stories that are sent slightly in the past. So the reader gets a sense that the story has already happened versus the story happening, immediately. Both are fine. It's just, however you do it. Unless you mix it up. You can do that. If you really wanted to get creative with the narrative structure, there are always ways to include both past and present into your story. A lot of that is you could just have a present tense story that has flashbacks and or somebody telling other characters about things that happened in the past. That's the easiest way to do that. Bad Monkeys by Matt Ruff is the example they use. It starts with the main character, Jane, in a police interrogation room using a third-person present tense voice. As Jane goes through the events that led to her being in the interrogation room, the narrative switches to first-person past tense. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's when you get more advanced. But yeah, if you have a character, you can switch it to once they're telling their story. You don't have to do it in dialogue. You can just have to say the next chapter starts and it's past tense present or past tense first person because they're telling you a recount of.
It's very kind of like Tarantino.
Yeah.
Start at the end and be like, yeah, I bet you're wondering how I got here, huh?
Boy, howdy. So last week, Spencer, started looking at the different kinds of narrative voices. That's not a lie.
Yeah.
That is not a lie. I actually did do that last week. But this person also did whenever they wrote this article. I guess we're done with the tenses. They're not going to name all the dozens of tenses, just the three that everyone knows.
Yeah.
You fucks. So we are going to catch up on part 1, person and tense. No, we're on part 2 now. Knowledge. What does your narrator know? This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
This is what I struggle with. How much, as the author, do I impart into the narration? I know everything.
Sure you do.
But should my everything in the story that I'm writing, not even that's a lie. I usually don't know where the fucking story's going. But as the narrator, quote unquote, what should I impart and what should I leave to the reader, and how much knowledge should my narration actually elicit? How much should it have? As I mentioned last week, when writing in the third person, you need to. Did I mention that in the last week?
Maybe I did. I don't know.
You need to work out if the narrative voice is going to be limited or omniscient, or even somewhere in between. The omniscient third person will allow you to move freely between your characters and gives you as many viewpoints as possible, versus the limited is almost like a character where they only know as much as the character or maybe a little more, or it's tricky, but those are the things that you have to figure out as you're writing. I feel like a lot of contemporary writers just fall into telling everything, and they don't think about the narration, as in maybe the narrator shouldn't know everything because they're just, like I said, either a character in the story or makes you think they're like a character. They only know as much as the characters, maybe a little more, versus, oh, I know everything and I could just do, I could pop into this part of the story, pop into that. I'm God. I could do it all, I honestly don't focus on, I just try to make the story as enjoyable as possible. And then when I look back on the edits, I'm like, is my narration too all-knowing? Should it be more limited?
One thing you got to worry about too, and it kind of goes into, I think, narrating of, especially when you have like the multiple characters, and just it's part that and part like something else where it's like you also got to make sure, like, if you have a character narrating something, that they can only talk about the stuff that they know.
Yeah.
Like if you have something going on with these other characters and that character wasn't there or nobody told him, how can they talk about it? You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is, like, so the third person omniscient narrator, a lot of times they will have knowledge that the characters don't.
Yeah. That my example is, I guess, more if you go with the first person, point of view like that.
That's more limited. So so if you had, unbeknownst to Big Ray, there was a dildo wielding maniac around the corner. Like, Ray doesn't know that, the narrator does, which means the reader does, which means there's some suspense there, versus if it was more limited, Ray sensed there was something around the corner, but he didn't know what. And then he heard the weird sound of rubber slapping on concrete. So, what's more enjoyable? I think the rubber slapping, the limited is probably more suspenseful versus, I know, as the reader, but that could be suspenseful too. If you know there's a dildo wielding maniac over there, is Ray gonna go around the corner or not?
Well, I was gonna say, like, one thing, like, I don't know if you see it so much like in like prose, like novel writing and stuff like that. I noticed a lot in like movies and shows and even like in comic books where it's like you as the audience know something that like I'm reading a Spider-Man comic and Spider-Man does know that the gangs are getting ready to team up to take him out. Yeah. But me as the reader knows that. And so that, like you said, like that adds the suspense or like how's this gonna, how's this gonna go and stuff like that.
Slasher movies have forever used both in the same movies to give you the frights, the scares, the spooks. Here's the character walking down the hallway. Oh shit, I see the murderer in the background. They don't know the murderer's there. I know the murderer's there. Whoa, shit, are they gonna die? What's gonna happen? And then two, now we're closer to the character and they hear something in the closet. We don't know what's in the closet. So you use both. Sometimes you see the monster. Sometimes you don't see the monster. Both are very effective. I think that's the problem with the book writing. So if you have a limited narration, you usually want to stick with that, right? You don't want to just go, oh, all of a sudden I can tell you that there's the fucking murderer standing behind them and they don't see it. But then later on, I'm going to do the other thing where it's like, oh, there's something in the closet and I don't know what it is. Well, why don't you? Knew the murderer was, that's a little tricky. Easier done in movie making. Character. When it comes to your first person narratives, the choice isn't so much between limited and omniscient as it is between unreliable and reliable. This is when I always get tricky because apparently a lot of works I've read are an unreliable narrator. And I'm like, I thought they were reliable.
Yeah.
I didn't. Maybe I'm too trusting. I don't know.
Yeah, because whenever you always say like the unreliable, I always think of like the narrator is one of like a character, or a character not quite involved or something, or like a Loki kind of,
Or what they telling you, is it the truth that they're telling you or lies? Well, they give Bad Monkeys Again by Matt Ruff as an example.
Maybe we'll have to read that.
I don't want to. The cover's hideous.
Okay.
It's fucking yellow and it's got a dumb monkey head though.
Oh.
I don't like it. I buy books only by the cover.
We could probably find a better cover.
Yeah, maybe. The credibility of your narrative voice can have a huge impact on how a reader engages with the story. Last week, I mentioned the book Bad Monkeys by Matt Ruff, using it as an example again throughout the book. The readers, so we could have probably just used part 1 of this and part 2 for fucking the week. So basically, the character, you don't know if they're telling the truth or lying. That's the unreliable narrators. You don't know if you could believe what they're saying. That's tricky. I don't know if I do that successfully. I don't know if I've ever actually tried.
Right, yeah.
And then obviously a reliable narrator would be like, Mark Twain telling you the story of Huck Finn. This is just what happened, Slightly less fun in that regard, but that's more focused just on the story.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really care about what the narrator, the truths and lies and all that stuff. And I'm not gonna read the reliable narrators. Let's go on to the end. That's it.
The end.
There's a bunch of hog gobbledygook thrown on there that we don't need to read because I skipped through those because we covered a lot of that stuff last week. But I thought that was more interesting because it's more of the actual mechanics of the narrative voice versus the I don't know, whatever the fuck we talked about last week. I don't remember. I don't remember lots of things. So, Spencer, are you going to go into your work now thinking more about not just the narrative voice, but unreliable narrator, tenses, all that fun stuff?
Well, that's always something like I'm always struggling with to begin with, of like, because like we've talked about before, because like that shapes how you, or how we even just mentioned in this episode, that's like the tools you use to shape the story and like can have a big impact. So I'm always like, is it better to tell this in a first person, third person? Like, you know what I mean?
I find in the past a lot of the stories I abandoned were solely because those things I couldn't set up.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just didn't, like at the beginning, I was like, this isn't working. I don't like the tenses, or I don't like the narration or the point of view. And then I just kind of give up, but I probably should just like, let me abandon what have written and start over in a different tense or a different, like the first novella I ever wrote was like 30,000 words, completed it, and on further review on the edits, realized I hated that I wrote it in present tense. Like it just didn't work. And I was like, I better start rewriting this in past. And it was too daunting. I just said, fuck it. And I'm never going to look at it again just because of that.
Would you rather just rewrite it?
I just hate. Well, it's like the pumpkin story we worked on. You read it so many times, you end up fucking hating it.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to fucking go back and read it again. I don't want to rewrite it. That's a problem. As a writer, sometimes you just don't want to. You hate your own work.
Yeah.
After going through it so many times. But anyway, some writing news, Spencer. I have cemented the narrative voice and everything of the nature in my current story that I'm writing for the Cosmic Horror Monthly. I was under the impression that their submissions open for 1 week in beginning of June. I was wrong. It was July. So I don't have to rush it. I can go ahead and flesh it out more.
Right.
Problem is, I was also wrong about the word count. I thought it was 6,000. It is 5,000. My story is at 2,500, and I haven't got to the horror. So if I stop what I'm doing now and go right into I actually started writing the end scene just so I have a place, like I have to get here, and I'm not going to fuck it up by having more, drawn. The problem was I created a fucking gross character I really like, so I started like
describing it.
Yeah, and it just the word count. And
that's like, I wish, like, because I was working on that one story for them too, like that one, like
space story.
And like I just like it's just like I don't think it, like, even if I get it like up where I would like it, I was like, I don't think it's like a right fit, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just don't think I have like a story. Like I wish I could come up with like a story idea that like I feel like that would be like something that they would be into.
The problem for me is that, and maybe it's just the cosmic horror I've read, mostly like H.P. Lovecraft and stuff, it's long.
Right.
Most cosmic horror is not just drawn out, but it's like really fleshed out, because the cosmic horror, it isn't like, oh, here's a monster, it's more of atmosphere and foreboding and like, oh, this guy found an evil book and what's going to happen, but we have to like flesh out the story of the book and flesh out what could happen if he opens the book. And like, it's not just about the book, So I don't know, and maybe that's my limited ability as a writer of cosmic horror, is I don't know how to do a 5,000 word story
and with anything happening.
Well, yeah, without just being mostly build up.
I was gonna say, have you read any more of their stuff other than that one magazine that
no,
we got?
I only got the one issue
because like I never finished it, but the couple stories that I did read out of it, it seemed like there was more like weird.
Yeah, it was like weird fiction, and I liked it. I liked the stories.
Oh yeah, I liked them, but it wasn't necessarily what I thought cosmic horror. And then I was like, well, maybe cosmic horror is just like the name of the the thing necessarily. Like.
Yeah, I definitely didn't feel like the story I'm going for is legit cosmic horror. I didn't feel it was, Cthulhu. I didn't like they had the Cthulhu monsters kind of deal, but it wasn't. Everything that made Cthulhu creepy was the fact that you're not seeing Cthulhu necessarily. Right. It's like all this weird buildup and stuff. So I just found that I'm not going to be able to write the story like the way that the stories were written in that magazine, at least the one I read. I'm not going to be able to just say, oh, there's a weird volcano and people were throwing themselves in, and I think that was one of the stories. And it was just like, oh, here's just like them going up to it and stuff, but not as much build up.
A kid turning people into rabbits.
Yeah. I really wish that was creepy. I really do wish that the word count was 6,000.
Yeah.
That seemed like I could do 6,000. I could still do mine. I feel like I'm gonna have to go back and cut out some stuff because I don't want to shortchange the 2 horror scenes that I have because I have it broken down to beginning introduction of the character and why the character's kind of detestable.
Okay.
And then the second scene is the character at his job, learning about, I'm not going to give away the story, learning about something that's going to, end up where bad stuff happens. But the character here is slightly more relatable. Can't have him completely detestable. And then you have the introduction to, think of the introduction, like the Evil Dead. They go in and say they find the Necronomicon or whatever, but it's like, oh, it's not inherently, this is just an evil book right off the bat. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. There's some build up here. That's what scene I'm at now, and I'm almost on the following scene, which is what is the precursor to the action. Then I'm going to have a kind of a deity scene. You think of a cosmic god of sorts. And then I'm going to have the post-action climax, so there's going to be some drama that makes the character detestable again, and the climax after that is going to lead to, since the character is once again presented as detestable, I like that something bad happens to the character. I'll tell you all off air.
Right.
But it's going to be tough because I feel like I'm going to have to shorten the deity scene in lieu of being able to keep the drama scene. And then I'm going to have to shorten the post-climax scene, which is actually the original reason I wrote the story, because it's what's really the cosmic horror feel for me. And at most, I'm going to have to go back and take out the second scene, have to really cut it down. But it's like I was saying off air, or maybe I was just, I don't know. But it's one of my favorite build-up scenes.
I was going to say, is there like anything from the beginning you could take off before you get into
It's not that long of a beginning, and the beginning is necessary. So it's just going to be some cutting, I guess. But I'll see how it goes, because if I really like the story and it needs to be longer, it's going somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's just, that was one of my goals this year, is to get into cosmic horror.
Yeah, because it just sucks, because they only have, 2 submission periods a year?
Yeah, they have one in January and one July, and it's only open for a week.
Yeah.
My goal was to finish the story, set it up in the email, or however, I think it's an email submission, have it set up and see if I could schedule it for midnight,
right,
or 12:01 of the opening day of submissions. Because what Starlight Pulp taught me was that
getting in early helps.
When they read them in order as they get them. So I'm assuming the cosmic horror is the same way, because that's what Starlight, that's what the guy said, is that, hey, if we have 100 submissions but you were number 3, you have a better chance of getting in if your story's good, because say your story we read in order, so your story we read third, versus the 98 story, which is also really good, but it's a similar story. We're gonna probably take 3 before 8,
right.
98. So that's you just have a better shot. So that's what I'm hoping to do. But it's a fucking word count. Word counts always get me.
Yeah,
I just don't know why horror or any publication can't have short stories 10,000.
Yeah,
I don't care about fucking attention spans. Give us 10,000 words.
Right.
Because I'd rather read...
And because you don't have to do the 10,000.
Yeah, you don't have to. If the story needs to be shorter, it can. But I would rather read a longer cosmic horror story that's very fleshed out versus what I felt a lot of those ones in the magazine where it was slightly rushed, probably because of that word count.
Well, do you think... Well, what probably is a part of it is like... Because even say, they give you 5 cents a word.
That's the thing. Just change your payment. Like, I understand if it's, 5 cents a word, or some other ones it's per page.
Right.
Have a cutoff. So it's like up to 5,000, which I've seen some places do, that take longer word counts. Up to 5,000, you get $50 a page, or 5 cents a word, or whatever it is. After that, it's lower.
Mm-hmm.
Or even maybe not even nothing. Maybe.
Or you get maybe a little extra $5, but nothing after after that.
Yeah, like that's fine. I just want the story published, but I want to be able to tell the long story I want to tell.
Well, just a story that whatever you want to tell
needs to be the length that it needs to be. And a lot of times my biggest struggle as a writer in getting into these publications is I'm almost never satisfied with my stories because most of them
You have to trim too much.
I have to trim too much. That's why, like the one I did for the Beautiful Darkness of the Dragon Soul Press, they had a 15,000 word limit, and my story was like a 15,000 words. So I ended up cutting out of necessity, but not for the publication. Just this doesn't need to be in the story, and I got exactly where I wanted. My Asher Kang story got it exactly where I wanted because they had a higher word count. But a lot of stories, it's like, I've even abandoned stories because I'm at the ending and I have maybe 1,000, 2,000 more words need to go in to finish this. And I already am past the word count.
And you're like, well, where else could I put this?
Yeah. Because I'm the kind of writer is a lot of times I write the story exactly how I want it to be. So once I get to the end, I don't have much to cut. I mean, I can cut some detail, some filler words, but I usually do that anyway. But I don't have a lot of stuff to cut. Even when we were doing your story for the Flash Reloaded, that was kind of tough.
Right. Oh, that was really tough.
Because we added to make it more suitable for the publication and make it a more enjoyable story. But then we actually had to get a lot of the beginning of the story we had to cut out.
And there was a lot of stuff like we could have done with that story to even with that, if that was only like a 2,000 or 3,000 word story.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like that didn't need to be like 10,000 or nothing, but yeah, it would have been nice. It's like, yeah, you can never find the exact like word limit for what you want to do.
Yeah. But anyway, that is problems as a writer. I don't have any news, other news, I don't think. So, folks, if you want to check us out at DPW.
I made a little bit of progress on my stuff. Like I said, I'm only still around.
You're.
My superhero story. I'm only around like 1,500 words, or 1,500 words. But like I'm slowly slogging there, I guess. But
well, I told you like June 15th would be ideal to finish the first draft.
Yeah,
that would give us a month and a half to really polish it up, cut, paste, whatever we got to do,
right,
to get it ready for an August submission,
right.
And I think it's doable.
Yeah,
I mean that's 15 days from now,
right? Yeah, I just gotta
15 to the 20th. I figure that's.
I'm hoping that maybe when I can, when we get done with the gym after this and get home and stuff, I can try to get some writing done.
If you go into, because the way I go into it a lot of times is just, okay, here's the scene. If I go into it where like I need to finish or mostly finish the scene in a session, if it's not too long of a scene, it's easier for me to get the story done versus if I'm just focused on continuing the story.
Right.
Like okay, I today I'm going to work on this scene and hopefully finish this scene. That speeds it up because you're not going to, you don't cut yourself short. You don't like, all right, I'm tired, I'm done. Like, well, I only got a couple paragraphs and the scene's over. I'll just finish the scene. You know? I just find that's a better way to go about it. But anyway, if you folks want to follow us at DPW Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can check me out, CalebJamesK.com. You can buy my books I'm in, check out my publication history and all that stuff. Spencer's OnlyFans, he is in Cambodia, and he is caulking cracks. Caulking. Why is it caulk? It's caulk. It's spelled caulk.
Yeah.
But they pronounce it cock. Like
funny.
A big flapping dick. Like a man's member. A penis, unflaccid or hard.
You can be like, hey, can you hand me that cock?
Erect. Yeah, could you hand me that cock? Ew, why'd you put that in my hand? That's your wiener.
Yeah, your cock's leaking.
Yeah. Also, I don't like that Anthony Weiner's trying to make a comeback.
Yeah.
Like, you're a sex pest. Just stay out of politics, fuckhead. Though that interview you sent me was kind of funny.
Right.
Where he was like talking about like, well, it became a big story because I put a picture of my dick on the internet. My last name's Wiener.
Yeah.
If Matt Gates, who's, because they was talking about him being a fucking kid fucker, he was saying his name was Matt Kid Fucker. They would put him on. I was like, okay, that guy's kind of funny.
But he was like, the point I liked, the scary point was like, back then it was like, that wasn't a thing that happened a lot. It was a slow couple weeks of news. He's like, if I did that now, nobody would give a shit. Like,
when your last name's Wiener, I guess you do have to have a sense of humor. Anyway, we will check you out next week. Also, not endorsing Anthony Weiner. No. He can fuck off. I don't care. But anyway, we'll check you out next week with maybe a DBS episode. We're overdue, probably.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.